Hello there, everyone. Casey, hi. Hey, Tessa J. Nice to see everyone here. Hola, Sarita. Hi, Diane. Anita. Hey, Marlene. Hi, Ellen. Bonjour. Buenos dias. Ruth. Hey, shalom. Nice to see everyone. Happy Sunday. Um, it is, seems my signal, my signal is bouncing around a little bit. Hey, Karen. Hey, nice to see everyone here. Jack and Bella, lovely. Nice to see you there. Hey, Walter, good to see you, my friend. Can I just do a quick sound check, everyone? Are you hearing me okay? Because that's great. So I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I have the Wi-Fi absolutely turned off because I've stayed in so many of these hotels around here. It can pick them up. But I'm thrilled to have everyone here. Is the picture better now? Yeah, it is bouncing. Hey, Matt, is that Matt in Hong Kong? Hi there, pal. Nice to see you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're on time. It is an honor to have you here. I am going to have to watch my step quite a lot. Hey, good to see you, Matt. You do some wonderful tours. I'm lovely to have you here. So, again, if you haven't met me before, my name is Patrick Toomey, of course, and I live, well, normally I say I live high up. There's Catherine, there's Mom. I normally say I live high up in the Canadian Rockies, but that's kind of irrelevant here because I'm walking along right now at 3,250 meters above sea level, or about 11,000 feet. So, and I've come down the street. I actually had a plan for today's tour where I wanted to walk up La Cultura, Puerto del Sol, um, right up in the middle of beautiful Cusco here. But because it's Sunday, there's a parade on too, so I get to show you quite a lot more. But I am here in, well, hey, Matt, what was, of course, the Inca capital. Part of the reason that I have such a deep relationship with this place is I first traveled here 20 years ago. Hey, Moira, nice to see you. I'm Michelle, and I've brought tours here over the years, of course, but I actually lived here for a year, working as an economist with the Canadian government. Finn went to school here, so that's why we have such fluent Spanish. To see the buses we used to travel, I took a picture of one today, which I texted to Finn, but he says he's out of context. He's at a camp at the moment. But I used to take Batman home. My bus was either called Servicio Rápido or Batman. But what I want to show you in the distance, look at those fantastic mountains. So we're here in the navel of the earth. This, of course, was the center of the Inca Empire. It's also not the birthplace of the Quechua language, but absolutely the essence of it. Look at those beautiful, those peaks you're looking up to there are all about 4,000 meters height. Hi, Marilyn. So that gives you a sense of the height of that. There are two apus in the area. Ausangate, which is to the south. If we look straight down here in the distance, I'm right by the old train station. I'm going to take a train up to Puno in a couple of days. Hey, Ken. But straight down south, about 10 kilometers, you get to La Rapa, which is where we lived when we were here. And then you go south and you go for about 6 or 7 hours driving all the way down to Puno and Lake Titicaca. Hi to you, Jay. I can tell you that when I did live here, of course, the whole city exists down in this valley. It's about 500,000 people. It's the historic capital of Peru. And of course, there are here in South America, Andre, it's so wonderful, isn't it? There are roughly 10 million Quechua speakers. Now, the language changes quite a lot, but from northern, hi, Sachin, from northern Argentina all the way up into Ecuador, of course, where Steffi lives there in Quito, there's a lot of Quechua spoken, and then all the way up as far as Bogota, right through the Andes, right? But I wanted to come and sort of walk up the main street here, and because there's a parade on, this is a dancing culture. Roughly 50% of the population of the city speaks Quechua, but of the region, it would be more like 80%. It is said the actual origin of the word Cusco was, now we translate as navel of the earth, but it's an older story than that. It was probably Aymara. The skyline is fantastic. Now, I got up quite early. I have to say, I spent 14 hours in bed yesterday. Carol! Hello, Carol Walker. Lovely to see you here. So yesterday, I did a tour on a different platform, and then I went out for lunch, and I went for a hike, and I just drank water. I've had absolutely zero headache whatsoever, although I am still reacclimatizing to the altitude here, so it's fine. Look at that lovely face, the welcoming, and this is an Inti culture. Ruth, generally speaking, it is Spanish, although traditionally, officially, Quechua is an official language in Peru. No, Peru has dozens of languages if you get down into the Amazon basin area. Now, but I just want to come up and show you, everyone, there's a lot to talk about. Now, let's keep in mind, for those of you who are all great Hago fans and participants. I am meeting Mike this afternoon. So I am going for lunch today with my old neighbors from here. And normally, let me get into that, Myra. Oh, about yesterday, Casey. Sorry. So then that's altitude brain, by the way. So then I got 2 liters of water and I drank water and I lay down and I fell asleep for a few hours. And then I woke up and it was already kind of night. I'm like, no, I'm just going to stay in bed. So yes, I was in bed for 14 hours. So I got up and went out quite early for a good walk, as one does. But let's just start. But just to finish my point about Mike, so yes, I'm meeting Mike later today. We're actually both involved in a whole different thing, these 360 videos. I brought him a camera. He wasn't keen on doing a tour because he's in Machu Picchu just about all the time these days. And so that's why I talked to him about doing one together. But I'm meeting old neighbors that I used to have lunch with, and we used to play soccer on Sundays. So we're going to watch the Canada game today, and we're going to have fun doing that. I will, Marilyn, don't worry. And I did talk to him about it, but he's just so busy. Now look at this. These are the wonderful rainbow flags. This is the Andean flag or the Inca flag. Now, when I'm up in La Paz, up in Bolivia, you're going to see a different version of this wonderful, colorful flag. But again, this is a high altitude culture. It is predominantly Catholic, although of course the line between Catholicism and traditional Andean beliefs is not an obvious one. When I say it's an Inti culture, the former currency of Peru was the Inti. It's now the sol, means the same thing. Inti literally means, is that right, Kristen? Literally means sun, and this is the sun culture. And in fact, now we'll talk about the dancers because it's just so lovely. But way up in the distance, so we're looking north there, and way up top there is Saksai woman, which of course everyone always makes the same joke, sexy woman, sexy woman. That's where they have interriming. That's where they enjoy the rising of the sun. Now keep in mind, Machu Picchu was not the capital. This was the capital. Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas, and I've been there. Thanks, Matt. I've been there many, many times. It's wonderful, but that is not the Inca Trail. It is an Inca Trail. And Inca is just the term for the royals. This is a Quechua culture, right? And have a look at these people. Now I wore long sleeves and long trousers just because the sun is so sharp, but they must get so warm. But check out the music. I'd love to try and show you. There's many different spellings of Cusco, by the way, too, because they're plays on both originally Aymara and then Quechua. Of course, Aymara is the language that I will encounter when I get up to Puno and when I meet Reynan, of course, in a few days. Ruth, I will not join the dancers. And I can tell you, I can hear they're starting, whatever the parade is. And I did leave a message for some of my friends here, but they hadn't gotten back by the time I started the tour to ask what particular event this is. But I know it's getting towards the end of the school year as well. Then there might be a Cusco in Spain, but this one, the CUSCO. Diane, I have several times actually. I've done it with groups as well. So check out it. Now remember, these people are at 3,400 meters dancing like this. I think we're going to have a treat when we get to the square. Are you still able to hear me, by the way? I do have my headphones in. But, okay. The Inca Trail is generally considered a 4-day hike, Diane. Day one is quite short. Traditionally, I was just down by the old train station. When you used to take the train to Machu Picchu, it actually left from right down here, and you went through switchbacks to get over the mountains in the distance. Oh, goodness. I don't want to abandon these because I want to show everyone a site further up. But maybe I'll go a little quicker for a minute and get a little past this particular place. So then you do a first day hike. But the train now, if you take the train to Machu Picchu, you have to drive up over the hill. Well, he's a lovely fellow, Mike. But yeah, you hike sort of a short hike, and this is one of the things Mike does, right? I mean, that takes groups. Day two is the really big one. Oh, that's Cynthia. Day two is the really big one where you hike then up to 4,200 meters, and day three it's something like, if memory serves, 3,700 steps mostly down. and then you arrive by the sun gate. Now that noted, see, these are all sun images here. I really don't want to interpret it, the dresses, the outfits for you. Thanks, Marlene, because that would just be preposterous of me to try and do so. But the first time, Dead Woman's Pass, exactly, Tessa. But the first time I ever did it, I actually did a 8-day trek and went up to Salcantay, which is one of the holy mountains. And I did get sort of a photo of it yesterday from the airplane. That was the first time I ever slept at 5,000 meters, and that is a glacier on top. No Moira, he's just in very much his high season right now. They're super busy. Great time to tours with him. He does them in Machu Picchu. But say we're involved in another thing together, so I mean that's why we're catching up. Oh, hi, Abigail and Maya, shalom, mashlomach. Lovely to have you here. So I'm up, so I should say to everyone, ayayanchu, because that's hello in the Quechua language. And there is a different accent to the spoken Spanish. By the way, up in the distance, you can see the dome, but I want to come up and still show you some murals. I had fully intended to do this road today as part of our tour. And then, of course, with a big event on, it's so much fun. But I do want to come back to Maria's question about acclimatizing. So I do have a very long article on my website about acclimatization. And Moira, you missed it the other day, but with Elizabeth, there's Batman. See that? The Batman bus. The other day with Elizabeth, we were up at 5,000 meters, and I was chewing on coca leaves, which is pretty fantastic. But really, I've had no headache at all. Now, I also live quite high up anyway in the Rockies, right? Which is different. If you come from sea level, is a different feel. But when I come up here, you just have to take it slowly. You see, I'm walking on a gentle incline here. Yeah, so this is this incredible mural. Thank you, Helen. I thought you might. I really appreciate that. So there, if you click on that, it really is a pretty in-depth look at what it is to go to altitude. Now, this mural, I have stood here with local guides like Mike going through this mural. I like some of it. Remember, Pizarro came here in 1533. The Spanish arrived in 1532. And by 1650, they had dismantled most of the major Inca buildings to build their churches. So when you sort of see an image of a conquest here, I think it's very important to take that seriously. And all control of the society was basically handed over, thank you, Sue, to the Spanish conquistadores. For anything economic and anything social went to the church. And that remained that way until independence of just about, thanks, Sarah, every Latin American country, with the exception of Haiti, Cuba, Dominican Republic. But the independence really was between 1809, the first uprising, and about 1831. The early constitutions were actually wonderful constitutions. It just didn't always play out, but you get a sense of the old concept. The one that I kind of struggle with is that sort of noble savage, but also the uprising. So there's a lot to be extracted from this mural. And I will talk to Mike about it when he's back and has time to give some proper tours. He could do a whole tour just on this. Thanks, Judy. Oh, the dancing's wonderful, isn't it? I thought it was a school. I thought it was a religious procession at the very beginning because there is at the top. Clearly, it's much more of that going on. They have events you might have noticed the other day when I was in Arequipa with Elizabeth. There was an event on there as well. And by the way, whenever I see the Peruvian flag, it's not. This isn't a tourist day. This is their own stuff. This has nothing to do with tourism. There. But more. So a bunch of questions here. Yeah, it's it does. My screen is freezing on me a little bit, so I know I'm missing some of the chat. But yeah, they started with a procession at the beginning, but everything happens around the central plazas, of course. But there's really two places I wanted to come and focus on our little walk here. Now, what I wanted to focus on up here is on the other side of the street. I'm not going to try and cross over there today, but it is amazing how so many people, and everyone has a role to play in these, and it's so much part of their cultural identity. Up in Puno, when you're up in Lake Titicaca, then you see, then you also see these wonderful dances. And again, they're at like 4,000 meters. It's incredible. No school on Sunday. But you see, obviously, these are all big events that are happening, and they all build up to them, and they're happy, right? Like, it's obviously something you look forward to doing. It's not an obligation. When Finn went to school here, lady had a Canadian football jersey on. when Finn went to school here, we also had events that he went to, which was kind of fun. But anyway, so a bunch of different questions coming in here. Let me come back to that. Maybe if I find a quieter place, we can do a bit of a Q&A. But let me just keep going with the walk because I want to show you Santo Domingo Monastery up in the difference here, in the distance. But really where I am is Coricanchi, or Golden Enclosure. When the Spanish arrived here, oh, you've been here, Matt. Yeah, when the Spanish arrived here, this was the official royal palace of the Inca Empire. Now, we could go on and on about the Inca Empire, but it was covered in gold on the outside. And inside, they have a map of the Milky Way. Now, I have to tell you, when you're at high altitude, the views of the sky are absolutely incredible. I mean, just spectacular. I mean, I've camped, of course, as high as 6,500 meters, and you really feel like you see every star. By the way, I'll just give you some of the sites that you come and visit if you're in this area. So Tuesday, I'm going up there because I haven't been up to the Colored Mountain yet. You said this is Cusco, Peru, the capital of the Inca Empire. But all of this, so by 1650, the Spanish had dismantled this whole capital palace, taken all the gold, of course, hi Pauline, taken all the gold. In fact, when they took the Inca king, they locked him up and said, if you fill this building with gold, then we will give you your life. They filled it with gold and they killed them all the same. So they turned this into a monastery. And remember, until Vatican II, some young women would go into convents and never come out again, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of that really deep history here. But when you do go, and here, the colors, Maryland, as a whole, it's because the glaciers actually melted too quickly, and there's a ton of mineralization. Keep in mind, even though Cusco gets 2 million visitors a year and is the center of tourism for both Peru and South America, the biggest economic factor here is still mining, and that's true of all of Peru. So that'll be. I'm sure I won't be able. Hey, Elise. I'm sure I won't be able to do a tour up at the Colored Mountain. I mean, do keep your eyes out if I put a last minute up. But I'll try and do a little video up there. Now I'll be up at about 5,300 meters. But this was Coricanchi. So this was where they saw themselves, not on the planet, but within the universe. So there's a map on the ground of the Milky Way, or the Muye, as interpreted by the stars. And of course, remember, here I am in a valley. You know, I'm looking straight up north, and we get up to the square. It's almost a perfect square, and that's the Chacana, or the Andean cross. Of course, it had nothing to do with a Christian cross. And that's the Andean cross, and I normally wear one. I need to put one back on, and it's really an image of the high mountains. Elizabeth has one. You see it even built into the ground. These ladies here as well. Traditional hats, it's a hat culture, and of course they're so lucky, they grow big, thick, dark hair, which protects them from that hot sun as well. So I was saying earlier, when I see the Peruvian flag, by the way, if I only see it flying in the distance, if you don't see the middle, you can often mistake it for a Canadian flag too, which is pretty cool. But look at this, I'm getting up towards the front of the procession. But what a treat to be able to share this with everyone. By the way, just for kicks, look down in the distance. So if we went straight down to the bottom of this road and hung a left, you'd be getting to the airport. For 22 years, they've been promising a new airport that nobody wants. Well, some people want. But I tell you who really doesn't want the airport up here, the big new one, is the airport in Lima. Because if they built a massive one that could take the big jets, then no one would be stopping necessarily at Lima. So there's lots of that kind of politics. Danielle W. has been here with me in this city before. I think that was 2017, Danny, or 2018, if memory serves. So but it's always fun to come out walking. Now we're just starting the rainy season, so it was perfectly sunny this morning, and then the clouds are just gradually building up. But probably won't rain yet. Although do remember that we saw fresh snow on the volcanoes the other day. Well, we even had snowfall on us at 5,000 meters. And so the snow line here is a bit lower. And that's because if you go over these mountains, well, in fact, if you drive up that way, you climb up over a high pass, and then you descend down into the Urubamba Valley. Oh, thanks, Danny. Yeah, it was this time of year, I think, Danny. It's a lovely time to travel here. The Urubamba Valley, which is the sacred valley of the Incas. Well, it's spring here, Lynn, so we're in very much South America. But again, what complicates all of that is in the high Andes, you have these reverse seasons as well. So really what's happening, now you'll join me all in a couple of weeks, or I don't know, 10 days, and I'll be down in the Amazon in Iquitos. But the rainy season starts down in the Amazon. So I'm in the true Andes Mountains here, down the backside, which is the east slope. Really, 3 days from now, I'm taking a train up to Puno. I'm going to pass the Paso de Raya, and that is, by some arguments, the true headwaters of the Amazon River. It's a glacier up there. It all drains out of these Andes. Well, rainy season comes in to the Amazon, and then it plows up the east slope of the Andes and up and over into this valley. And it's amazing in February. Like the Inca Trail closes because it rains so much. The Inca Trail closes, it all comes piling in here. And I mean, most people take their vacations in February and they go down to the coast or Lima or something because it literally can rain every single day. I remember having to go out at night and put the gutters back up on the house. And of course, it's adobe, so your house is melting. So it's a monsoon, but it's a monsoon interpreted at 3,400 meters above sea level. Hey, by the way, for you gentlemen on board who want to treat yourselves sometime, up to the left on this street, I can't really show you, probably closed because it's Sunday, but I'm not going to shave for the next few days because then I'll go in and actually have a true hot shave. It's just up on the right, and they're lovely people, and it'll cost me like $3.50. So it is just one of the things. Of course, when I worked here, I used to work in that building across the street here, which is the Justice Palace. That and the next building, which is the municipality. And so it's quite common to go into work unshaven a couple of days, and then it's a lovely tradition. The currency of Maryland is the sol, S-O-L, which means sun. So keep in mind, right, it was the Inti, I-N-T-I, and Inti Raymi is the huge event in June, which is, of course, the welcoming of the new year. They very much used, so you had the 4 cardinal points, and they laid their city out in that shape around the cardinal points. They do, Lynn, yeah, so I'm always very polite to them. Now, again, make your way up towards the Central Plaza, and I hope my mom's still here because she never was able to visit when we were living here. But now, just coming back to the altitude factor, though, it's whenever I come back up to altitude, I find it pretty easy, although I don't adapt right away. It's and when these people go down, if they spend a month at the coast, they have to come back and readapt. So it's not that, not that your body necessarily remembers it. Thanks, Karen. Although I know my body at altitude, and as long as I don't have a headache, I'm pretty happy. Hey, Sayuri, hola. So, here's mom. Is that right, Andre? Well, I was there for probably twice a week. I was there for meetings. Isn't that a lovely tradition? Yeah. Say, once I go home, maybe I'll do a raw history talking about it. Let me see if I can I want to curve down the road. Look at that gorgeous view up there. Cusco. By the way, the other thing you see is part of the world on every corner of pharmacies. That's kind of tough. It's because people basically self-medicate, and Peru particularly had an extremely difficult time during the pandemic. Thanks, Karen. So that's a tough one. You can buy just about anything over the counter, but the worries about that is people have gotten so much in the tradition that if you have a bit of a cold, you go and take antibiotics till you feel better a couple of days. Can you imagine some of the drug resistance that comes out? Yeah. Now, I always carry some antibiotics with me just in case someone falls really sick on a tour, but they end up just going out of date. There's the municipality of Cusco. So Cusco is both the city here and the province. And I give you one little view down the road. Here's this parade coming towards us with those fabulous mountains in the distance. What a great view. Well, that's all I didn't see. They're lovely to see you. As I say, my screen is intermittently freezing, so I feel as though I'm probably missing some of the chat. So I'm meeting Mike this afternoon. Yeah, so I'm meeting my old neighbors for lunch and to watch soccer. No, Maryland, absolutely cannot buy antibiotics over the counter in Banff. No, not in Canada at all. And in fact, Chile, since I lived there, cracked down on it a lot. But and here though, I did tell the story the other day, but I'll tell it one more time. So I had a gentleman on a tour a few years ago. It was a lovely, very traveled English gentleman who used to do tours and then give talks to seniors' homes, a bit like we can do with our virtual. But that was And he was a lovely man. He was so excited to come to all these places, and he'd done his research. But as soon as we got up to Kolka, boom, he got real altitude sickness. I usually find out of 20 people, 2 will kind of struggle. And the poor fellow was really feeling rough. So then he went and talked to a so-called doctor, because they say they give you a visit with a doctor, and he tried to give him antibiotics because he had diarrhea, which is one of the side effects of altitude. And I told him, do not take those antibiotics. You're going to be messing with yourself. Um, and after, yes, that's right, Maryland, it is crazy. And so then after about a few days, we were in Cusco, and we were on our last day in Cusco. We'd been to Machu Picchu, and the poor fellow was really feeling terrible. And then finally, we were flying to the Amazon the next day to Puerto Maldonado, and he phoned me in my room and he said, "You're not a doctor. You shouldn't be giving me this." He was pretty angry because he felt so crappy. And I said, "All right, I'll tell you, when we land in Puerto Maldonado, if you're still sick, you can take any pill you want." And we flew down there in 47 minutes, and he stepped off the plane and he felt like $1,000,000, 100%. Like it was pure altitude. So don't go and assault yourself with anything else. Um, are they? Antonio is from Bolivia. Isn't that lovely, Patricia? So I am obviously going up to Bolivia on, I guess, Wednesday. I can't remember which day, but I'm taking the train up and staying in Puno and then going over and meeting. And so Renan has a couple of tours up on his platform. And so I'm looking forward to catch up with him. And they certainly were giving me a million ideas of things to do. Come look at this central square, though. And we'll go see the Inca. So yeah, it's been really lovely to catch up, of course, with people that we know here through Hago. Of course, I already knew Elizabeth very well, and but it was lovely to see Vanessa down in Lima. It's so we're here, and of course, one of the most photographed plazas in the whole world. Thanks, Chloe. And it's so lovely seeing the two flags. You have the Andean flag or the Inca flag or the Cusco flag, whatever you want to call it. There, of course, is the cathedral. Obviously, all those dancers are heading up here. Um, so, yeah, I guess they had to put up a picture. I would have liked to surprise you, but yes, I'm going to rappel probably face first down the side of a building in La Paz. It's called Adrenaline. Absolutely, Brooke. Silver everywhere, um, and gold. Although you do have to be very careful, um, and you do hear stories. I mean, there's a lot of things. I'm never ever worried for my personal safety, and I like to really stress that to everyone. I mean, I really want to stress that to everyone. I'm not worried for my personal safety, but everything from changing money. I mean, I've been caught out with fake notes before. It's very similar to Canadian flag. Yep, it's Peruvian flag has its coat of arms, but it does. Well, great question, Ava. Let me come back to that in a second, because first I'll show you the Inca statue here in the center. Um, as a single woman, well, people are. I mean, they're friendly, but Highland people are not. I mean, that whole idea of sort of that sort of self-image of like Latino culture out dancing self and stuff. That's not. I mean, this is an Inti culture. You get up with the sun and you go to bed with the sun. But in terms of surrounding, you do feel safe. You do. And people are trying to sell you things, but that's it. You know, have a look though. These are houses all the way up in the hills. In fact, one of my very favorite places on earth, and I might try and go there tomorrow, and I will actually probably rent a car, which I would drive myself because I do know how to drive here, but it's Corca, Cora. And I'm friends with the former mayor there, but you drive up over this hill. The problem about getting to Corca is you go past the garbage tip of Cusco, and that is an unpleasant experience up at 4,000 meters. But then you descend down into a valley that is so green. And when I come back to what I was talking about earlier on our walk today, there is Inca Trail there that the mayor had kind of cleaned up for an event, walked down it, and what he said, when his grandparents or great grandparents would have walked for a day or a day and a half to come into Cusco to market. And along the trails, you actually see markings of either fish or llamas, whatever the product was that would have been dispersed there or shaved there. So it is pretty incredible. And you get up past one of the apus called Mama Simona, which I can just about. No, I'm not quite seeing it today. I have to get a little bit higher to see it. But I can show you in a zoom up here. My plan is to go for a walk. Um, yeah, Brooke, I don't tend to do that, but it is interesting. I have seen shamans down. What a day. But this is so common here. Now look up in the distance. There's a Cristo Blanco. So there's the White Christ up there. And that's my plan, is to hike up there after I'm finished with all of you, because that's my good like acclimatization. And I get up top there, and there's actually archaeological sites all over. Do keep in mind, I mention this quite often, but we don't call them ruins. They're archaeological sites because this culture is not ruined. Thanks, Helen. this culture is still alive and well, and that's pretty significant, right? Obviously, the informality, if you talk about Peru in a macro sense, just to the David's question about people being spread out in every direction, the informal element of the economy is 30 or 40%, so it's massively informal. There are two types of distinct poverty in Peru here. One is very distinctly rural poverty, and the other is urban poverty. If I had to pick one, I'd rather not have to pick either, but I would certainly pick rural poverty, because up here, at least, thanks Dan, because there's an abundance of food, right? I mean, potatoes come from here, quinoa comes from here. I mean, it's such an easy place, as we said to Ruth before, such an easy place to be vegan or vegetarian as well. That said, if you look around Arequipa, I took a picture. It's probably not good enough to post, but taking off, Arequipa is extremely dry, and so is Lima. Taking off from the air, you see literally thousands of tiny informal houses with thanks, Pauline, with a small fence around, but in dry desert. That is a pretty tough kind of poverty to live in. See how everyone has their umbrellas? Everyone, that's not for rain, that's for the sun, because the sun's so strong here. Yeah, Brooke, thanks, Jane. I actually do have an article somewhere on my website about that, saying don't call it a ruin. And they're not and I mean that up in the Mayan world as well. I mean, these languages are alive and well. Carasol, exactamente. But have a look at these hills up here. There's lovely climbs. In fact, don't know if you can make it out. There's on the side of the mountain up in the distance there is the coat of arms of Peru. Thanks, Danny. The coat of arms of Peru on the left, and then it says Viva Peru on the right. And there's actually a viewpoint on the top. However, the one time we tried to go and walk up to that viewpoint, because there's stairs all the way up there, we couldn't do it because there's so many dogs, and they can be pretty aggressive out in the country. So there are things, I try very honestly, because, and having had, of course, the opportunity to live here as well, I love this place. And I have said to people, like, if Banff were not my home, it could well be living in Cusco. And I wouldn't live right here in the center, of course, because I look like a foreigner, and so everyone tries to sell me stuff all day long. But the access and the ability to see things and do things and the outdoors and the culture. Thanks. Great. Thanks, Chloe. It's yeah. It's sorry, Helen. I was freezing up a bit there, but if you found that article, well, okay, Andre. Where I'm actually going to be heading is San Blas, because there we are. Thank you. There's the article. Don't say ruin. Thank you for that. But I'm gonna head into the San Blas area, and then I will start up all the stairs as I make my way up. I do want to see this lady sitting here. Now, she wants her photo taken, so and they pay for it. It's not that I mind, but I'm not a huge fan of voyeuristic tourism. But you can see, when you see the rustic stones, you know that was paid labor. When you see them smoothed out, then it was more indentured labor. It takes a lot of work to actually smooth out stones. So for the things, it is up and down. I mentioned this the other day. People, you'll hear so often, oh, the Incas didn't have wheels. They sure did. They had pulley systems. What they didn't have was a wheel with brakes on it for coming down the side of mountains. And so that's why it really was a walking culture. And we're coming up to another plaza here. Sadly, for those of you who know Cusco, around your table was a bathtub with fish swimming in it. And just a lovely, but they've closed. So that's a bit of a shame. This one, I always feel like I get stuck on this street. You ever feel like you get stuck on this street? That's Purgatory Street, everyone. So, gosh, it's hard to know which way I'm going to go on this street. I could probably tell you. But have a look up, though. And again, when you see the way these streets are formed, you see that they've got this mesh down here in the distance. That's because when it starts to rain, it comes down super, super hard. And so they have to move so much water. But the hills, the buildings that are up in the distance, again, this is also an earthquake zone, so they would have to build according to that. And that plays a huge role in all of Peru. I guess just coming back to this conversation, though, about poverty in Peru. Peru does have, unfortunately, a really high level of corruption and a lack of belief in institutions. So that's all tough. Whereas, of course, in a culture like this, these are obviously extremely family-oriented cultures historically. And you're not that far. Like when we used to, yeah, yeah. Now you know, Andre. This is where Fallen Angel was. It's right in the corner here. So I was really surprised when I walked by yesterday and it was closed. Hopefully it reopens into something brilliant. But yeah, but um, but here overall, here's one of the really fancy hotels in town. I'm not staying there, by the way, but one of the really fancy ones. And then see all this. I mean, obviously, it was so typical Spanish colonial. Hold on, you give me a two-me twist here. Hang on tight, everyone, for a sec. Let's do one quick. There we go. You can take a quick postcard there and have a peek. And now let's go back. And here we are. And you know, I could go down through that little pass there, but I'm just going to go down and show you the famous stone that has the 12 angles on it. And again, the Inca construction was fantastic for so many reasons. Of course, they tipped inward, the pyramid style construction, and that's to absorb earthquakes. And because they didn't historically use mortar, that also allowed to absorb the movements of the earth. Thanks, Moira. Nice to see you back, Moira. I know you've been doing some really fabulous travel yourself, which is wonderful. By the way, the ladies, you see like the one who's out in front of me here, they actually live in a couple of towns that are just south of here. When I say south, um, it's the way down to Lake Titicaca. So we're actually in southern Peru now. It's just we're so high up it can kind of throw people off. But you go through the towns, you actually see everyone dressed that way. Lynn Finn is out of contact. Hey, Hassan, Finn is out of contact right now because he's at home in a camp. He was last month in Australia, so he just couldn't take any more time off school. I'm still toying with maybe sneaking him down to Oaxaca in Mexico in January. I have a group going down there back for cooking. Thanks, man. Back for cooking classes and the biggest tree in the world, right? And now down in Oaxaca, you're at 1,550 meters. By the way, this is an excellent pizzeria in here, and I just walked past. Um, I actually don't have a story about that. I walked past Uchu, which one of these days, maybe even today, I'll have lunch in. It's an Andean steakhouse. I take groups there for lunch. I just love it. So Donna, I happen to have I have a European passport because of my dad, and I actually am not here as a Canadian right now because as I was getting ready to travel, I realized I literally had one page left in my passport, and because I was coming to Peru and Bolivia, crossing in and out, I was going to run out of spaces. So, so I, so now, yeah, I changed my identity as I landed here. My Canadian passport is still good for it's good until 2026, but I'll have to renew it. Now here's the gentleman who's usually here. He wasn't here yesterday. He was dressed up like the Inca king. It means I won't be able to show you very well, but you'll see these famous walls are legitimate walls, and you have the famous stone of the 12 angles to it. Now imagine moving these gigantic stones. This is what very much it feels like up there at Machu Picchu. You can, Marilyn. Yep, you very do distinctly. Um, sorry, Marlene, you saying kickoff for the Canadian games in 9 minutes? I thought the game was until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Walter, really? The Canadian game's not early? It's, I'm a little bit disappointed about that. So these walls, Laura, that's a great question. So really, the Inca Empire itself, they sort of date officially. Sí, lo pasé, Rosana, porque el señor está ahí pidiendo plata para su foto. It was, if you say 1438 until 1532 is really the height of the Inca Empire. However, that story is much, much more complicated because people have been living here, well, quantifiably for well over 2,000 years and constructing with stones, which is very logical for the construction here. Um, so it's so they've been the stone construction goes back, and really the Inca Empire, the Quechua Empire, really united a huge number of other ethnic groups around. They absorbed them a little bit like the Mongols did, oddly enough, where they had a kind of tithing system, but you could more or less stay in your own way. So that is, again, that's a long conversation now, but it is fascinating. Another lovely street up here. Now, all those trees up on the side of the hills up in the distance are eucalypts. And I've talked about that the last little while. I mean, they're there for better and for worse. And why do I say for better and for worse? Well, because they stabilize the ground and they grow quickly, but they do change the pH balance of the soil. So this is now the San Blas area. So this is, it's sort of was the traditional studenty and artisan kind of neighborhood, kind of bohemian, I guess, in a sense here. When I was moving here, I stayed here for about a week before finding a house 10 kilometers away. But I remember having a hailstorm so big it looked like snow coming down here. So it's pretty magical. And yes, I am walking uphill. Let me tell you one more interesting story. I was taking a bus, and this actually encapsulates kind of two levels of life here. I was taking a bus over to Pisac, and Pisac is the market town, famously over in the Sacred Valley. Well, there was a lady coming onto the bus with a bag full of things, obviously that she was going to sell in the market, and she was very, very pregnant. Um, um, oh, is it Chloe? Thanks. I saw a sign and it had it 2 p.m. for the Canadian game, so they must have got it wrong. So anyway, I took this bus over to Pisac, about a 40-minute drive. But just above Pisac, the driver said, "You all have to get off here." I'm like, "Well, why? We're booked to go into Pisac." And he said, "Oh, they're doing a police control. I don't have my permit with me." And that kind of, no, gracias, amigo. So, that kind of informality. So then, I see this very, very pregnant lady with a huge bag. And I'm like, "Well, let me help you with this." Um, and she let me. And so I carry this heavy bag down the stairs into Central Pisac. And she so much wanted to give me a gift. And I said, "Oh, no, 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 no." And then she says, "Gracias," and picks it up with one arm and walks away. I'm like, well, there goes the the tough mountain guy. And she was probably, you know, barely up to my shoulder. That you see sometimes, particularly these women. Oh, this is all under construction right now. But here's the plaza at San Blas. I guess I'm gonna have to change my plans because my plan was to walk straight up here. But if the soccer game's on, my boy wouldn't forgive me if I didn't watch it, which means I might have to go to Paddy's Irish Pub because I'm sure he'll have it on the screen. Um, well, Rosemary, part of the reason I've come back here is I really wanted to get some more altitude in. I do find with altitude, I just make overall good decisions with my body. You have a lunch culture, not dinner. Lynn, the Irish pub's always been here. I know the fellow who owns it. I've met him because his kids went to the Alliance Française with Finn. But it's the highest Irish owned, um, you're right, highest Irish owned pub in the world. Although they have no Guinness on tap because Guinness pulled out of Peru from that point of view. Non, je vous en prie, ça fait tellement plaisir. These streets up here are just lovely, lovely. And you do see a lot of the dogs around. And you can see a lot of things happening here. Um, Generally, they're fine, and the people treat them well. It's out in the neighborhoods, they can be a bit rough. And there's all the eucalypt trees that they use for scaffolding, of course. So they're very effective. But I think what makes Cusco specifically so special, and it's not that other towns are not, thanks TNG, it's a little bit like the way Banff, of course, doesn't have the Airbnb and stuff. Cusco here, even though it's the most famous city, it's still like you saw this morning. They have such an active culture. Here's the Plazoleta de San Blas aquí. Um, so it is, but there's so much to do and explore up here. And there are stairs all the way up on these hills. So if you ever need a get fit trip, come back up here to altitude. Don't push yourself. Who gets sick climbing are young, fit men because they think they can push through it. But you don't push through it. Your body has to grow red blood cells, right? It takes time. And so this is why the route I'm taking is one I recommend a lot for groups where you go up to Arequipa, or if you come straight here, then you drive over and spend the night in Urabamba, which is down in the Sacred Valley. It's a bit lower, it's below 3,000 meters. And then you go to Machu Picchu, which is lower, not higher. And then you come back here. So you give yourself those few days and you drink a ton of water. Unfortunately, Pisco and everything doesn't help you acclimatize. No, Brooke, they don't look like they're starving. The, 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 the sort of most aggressive article I wrote was a sad one day called "The Dog Days of Cusco." And when I was living down the valley, I'll come up to this hill to give you a bit more of a view. But on garbage days, I used to walk into school with a stick in my hand because the dogs get so aggressive. And so, it's, I think, hopefully you all see how much I absolutely love this place, but I want to love it warts and all and not kind of pretend. Um, but that is a reality. Now you can see the sign up in the distance, Viva Peru, Viva El Peru. Pretty wonderful. But these valleys through here, so you can sort of think if I'm on Uh, did you, Matt? Well, yeah, lots of lovely little hospedajes up through here. Um, in fact, right behind me, Matt, is um, hospedaje and mirador. So I don't even look at these views up here. So if you happen to like altitude, this is a place where you can become an altitude junkie pretty easily. It is just gorgeous. And it's a lovely climate. And now, I mean, it's amazing to me how people here walk around with jackets on because you go, as soon as I start walking uphill, then because I'm working at high altitude, then I get hot faster, right? And then you go down or the wind shifts and you get cool. But it is gorgeous. And the city is friendly. It's a kind of a nice size because it's only sort of 500,000. The air quality is not too bad from combustion either. There's a lot of talk about a train right down the main street, La Cultura, which would be lovely. But unfortunately, all these things just take so long. And when you see these words written on the side there, you know, sutukaktu. So these are all really in the Quechua language. And when I was talking about the fact that there's on the shops, well, you go and you buy the proper corset pack and everything. See, these stairs can take me all the way up to the ridge up at the top. So, but I guess that's not the plan today. If I have to go watch some soccer, so then I'll go for a hike after I'm meeting my friends at 1 o'clock. Um, so, oh, by the way, the food is excellent. Just make sure that you have a sort of a lunch culture rather than a dinner culture, because have a great big meal and try and lie down and fall asleep, but it just sits there in your stomach. Right? It's such a different feeling. But I mean, look at that. Do you see that dressing right on there? The one on the right? That's passion fruit. That's maracuya. And those are empanadas. So I find that I do lose my appetite a lot when I'm up here. But then this is, a bit of altitude time. So, ladies and gentlemen, listen, thank you so much for coming along. I don't blame you. That, Matt, yeah, it's so much. And when I lived, say, 10 kilometers down, the nice thing was, we were clearly a foreign family, but thanks, Catherine. But suddenly there wasn't that, like, people weren't trying to sell us anything, didn't do my own laundry, take it to the laundromat. Thanks, Marilyn. And so from that point of view, they would, not try and double prices. Hélène, la température dans la journée, comme ça, 22, 23, puis la nuit, 11, 12. Yeah. See, thanks, everyone. Oh, you're welcome. I really appreciate, obviously, your support. I'm not trying to pay for this trip with tours, but it's obviously nice to sort of contribute a bit. Thanks, Laura. I wanted to come down here. I had a big birthday last year, and I wasn't able to really have, the big event. So then I thought I'd come back here and visit friends and get some altitude. Thanks for Molly. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm going to wander down, catch a little bit of the soccer. Thanks, Mom. Big hugs to you. You're kidding. Canada's really leading 1-0. Are you serious, Jeff? Because they've never ever scored a goal ever in the World Cup. So if that happens, that's great news. The only thing about Canada being in the World Cup is now I have to pretend I care about soccer. By the way, we used to go to soccer here to Garcilaso when we lived here. Hey, Matt, connect on Facebook. Okay, a todo el mundo, what I'd like to say to you is Tupananchiskama, which means see you later in the Quechua language. And I did put up a morning walk up in Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, but I'm mostly going to do tours on Renan's page. I really would love to support him. 2me tours, number 2me travel. I have a new website that I'm just coming out with. So number 2me travel. All right, everyone. Listen, thanks so much. I'm thrilled to share this with you. Lots of love and 1-0 Canada. Hasta pronto. Nos veamos en un par de días. Felicidades a todos. I might see about a tour in Puno when I'm up there too. So just keep an eye out on my channel. All right, everyone. Lots of love. Peace and love. Bye-bye.